Mia tightened her grip on the handle of her old mop as she pushed the cart down the dim hallway of Hayes Tower. The building was quiet at this hour except for the soft hum of the floor lights and the distant buzz of printers left on by careless employees. It was almost midnight, her favorite time. No one noticed the cleaning lady when the city slept. She liked it that way. Mia needed this job. Needed every dollar. Her son Liam was at home with his grandmother, probably asleep by now with his math workbook spread over his pillow. She pictured him and forced a small smile. One more floor tonight. Then she could go home, wash her hands, and sneak into bed beside him before dawn broke. Pushing open the glass door of the CEO's office, Mia stepped inside quietly. She had cleaned this room dozens of times, but never when its owner was here. Ethan Hayes, the man whose name glowed on the building outside, usually left before dusk. But tonight, as she dipped her mop in the bucket and turned around, she saw him standing by the massive window, his back to her phone pressed to his ear, voice sharp. Mia froze. She shouldn't be here while he was here. She hesitated, but then reasoned he was probably too busy to notice her. She lowered her gaze, focused on the marble floor, moving the mop in slow strokes to stay silent. Ethan turned suddenly, pacing the phone call, turning into an argument about deadlines and contractors who couldn't deliver. His eyes met hers for a split second, cold and dismissive. She lowered her head immediately. Just a few more swipes and she would be out. Her heart thumped. She stepped backward to wring the mop when her shoe caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled forward with a small gasp, hands flailing for balance. Her fingers grabbed at the nearest thing, which happened to be the edge of Ethan's suit jacket. But the tug didn't stop there. In her desperate grasp, her fingers snagged his tailored pants, and with an audible rip, the seam gave way. For a heartbeat, time froze. Ethan's phone dropped to the floor. Mia stared wide-eyed at the tear she had made fabric split along the side of his thigh. He looked down slowly, disbelief and fury mixing in his eyes. Around them, a few junior associates still burning the midnight oil poked their heads in at the commotion. One of them stifled a gasp. Ethan turned to face Mia, fully eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. His voice was low but sharp enough to cut through her bones. "Did you just rip my pants?" Mia's throat tightened. I am so sorry, sir. It was an accident. I tripped the carpet. I didn't see. I'm so sorry." Ethan pressed his palm to the torn seam, his face flushing red, not just with anger, but with the humiliation of it all. He glanced at the associates peeking from the doorway, who quickly pretended to be busy with their screens. He stepped closer. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" His words were soft but poisonous. Mia's lips trembled. "I'll pay for it. I swear I'll fix it. I can sew. I'll make it right." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "You'll fix a $2,000 pair of trousers. With what, a mop?" The corner of his mouth twisted in a humorless smirk. She opened her mouth to apologize again, but the words stuck. Her face burned. Her eyes darted to the floor. "Please, sir. I didn't mean to. I'll work extra hours, anything. Please don't fire me. I can't lose this job." Ethan's eyes hardened at her pleading. He bent down, picked up his phone from the floor, brushing dust from the screen with exaggerated care. He spoke without looking at her. "Get out." The words dropped like stones in her stomach. "Sir, please, I can explain." I said, "Get out. Now." His voice was louder this time, sharp enough to snap her spine straight. Mia clutched her mop handle like it could keep her from falling apart. She turned away quickly, eyes stinging, pushing the cart out the door as the associates whispered behind her back. Outside the office, she leaned against the wall for a moment, breathing in the scent of industrial cleaner and trying to swallow the lump in her throat. She felt the sting of shame deep in her bones, the kind that clung to your skin long after you scrubbed the dirt away. She had only wanted to finish her shift, make enough for rent for Liam's school lunch for a little more time before the next bill came. But now she had ripped the pants of the man who could end it all with a single nod. She wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her sleeve, steadied her breath, and pushed the cart toward the elevator. One floor left to clean, then home. Then figure out how to keep this job no matter what. Mia stepped off the late-night bus just as the city lights flickered against the early dawn haze. Her worn sneakers crunched along the cracked sidewalk, as she made her way toward the small apartment she shared with her mother and son. The neighborhood was quiet now, only the occasional bark of a stray dog or the low hum of an old car passing by. She paused in front of the corner store's display window, catching her reflection in the smudged glass. Tired eyes, a loose ponytail, hands rough from bleach and soap. She almost didn't recognize herself anymore. But there was no time for pity. She adjusted the strap of her bag, took a deep breath, and climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Inside, the tiny living room smelled faintly of last night's reheated soup. The couch, a second-hand thing that creaked when you sat too quickly, was piled with Liam's school books and her mother's folded laundry. From the bedroom came the soft sound of her son's breathing, steady and warm. Mia peeked in quietly. There he was, curled under a faded blanket, his small hand clutching a pencil as if he'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. She smiled despite the dull ache in her chest. Carefully, she lifted the workbook from under his arm, brushing a lock of hair off his forehead. His math problems were half-finished numbers scratched beside tiny doodles of rockets and cars. Mia bit her lip, fighting the guilt that pressed on her lungs like a stone. He deserved better. He deserved new shoes, not hand-me-downs from the charity box. He deserved a bedroom with superheroes on the wall, not a corner curtained off in his grandmother's small room. Mia knew it, and it burned at her every second she mopped marble floors that were cleaner than her entire apartment could ever be. She tiptoed to the kitchen, careful not to wake her mother. The old woman had given up her job at the diner last year after arthritis made carrying plates too painful. Now she babysat Liam, cooked, and reminded Mia to eat at least once before her night shift. On the fridge was a scrap of paper covered with reminders. Pick up Liam's uniform from the church donation box. Call the landlord again, ask Mrs. Lopez upstairs if she still had the old heater. Mia touched the list with her fingertips, tracing every word like a prayer. Her father used to say, "You're stronger than you think, little one." She wondered if he'd be proud of her, now scrubbing floors for people who never even looked at her name tag. Her phone buzzed on the chipped counter. A reminder from her bank. Low balance alert. She laughed bitterly under her breath, pressing the notification away like it was a mosquito. She opened the old cupboard above the sink, counting cans. 3 soups, 2 boxes of noodles, a bag of rice, barely enough for 2 days if she stretched it thin. She closed the door gently, forcing her mind to stay calm. There was always a way. There had to be. She was about to boil water for tea when a soft voice made her turn. Mama Liam stood in the hallway, hair messy, eyes still puffy from sleep. He rubbed his eyes with a small fist. "Hey, baby," she whispered, crouching down to hug him. "Why are you up so early?" He buried his face in her shoulder. "Had a dream. You were gone." Her heart cracked open, raw and deep. She held him tighter. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "You're tired." It wasn't a question. Mia kissed his forehead. "A little. But I'm okay." "Hungry?" He nodded. She stood, lifting him easily onto her hip. He was getting too big for it, but she needed to feel his heartbeat close to hers. She set him on a chair and pulled out the last box of cereal from the shelf. She poured it into a bowl and added milk, thin and pale. Liam dug in hungrily, feet swinging back and forth. "Did you finish your math?" she asked, ruffling his hair. He made a face. "Some of it. Fractions are weird." Mia laughed softly, wiping a bit of milk from his chin. "They're tricky, but we'll figure it out, okay?" He nodded. Mouth full. Eyes bright. There it was, her reason. The reason she pushed that mop down endless hallways. The reason she bit her tongue when people barked at her like she was invisible. For him. For this. She sat beside him, resting her chin on her palm, watching him eat, like it was the most important thing in the world. When he was done, she cleaned up quietly, tucked him back into bed beside her mother, and sat at the small kitchen table with her notebook open. She scribbled numbers in the dim light: rent, groceries, Liam's school lunch, the overdue electricity bill. And now she added at the bottom, pay for suit pants. She closed her eyes for a moment, pressing the pen to her lips. Maybe tomorrow she could talk to Mr. Hayes. Maybe he would listen. Maybe he would understand. Maybe he wouldn't fire her if she explained how much she needed this. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Hope was a fragile thing, but it was the only thing she had left, and she'd hold it tighter than anything else. It was just past 7 when Mia arrived at the towering glass building downtown. She swiped her ID badge at the side entrance, her reflection disappearing in the polished doors that closed behind her. Inside the lobby, gleamed with spotless marble floors and walls so white they seemed to glow. She slipped on her cleaning gloves and tied her apron tight, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. She had only 30 minutes before the first wave of executives flooded in, important men and women in expensive suits, shiny shoes, clicking on floors she had just mopped. She moved quickly, pushing her cleaning cart down the hallway lined with framed awards and photographs of Mr. Hayes, shaking hands with mayors and foreign investors. To Mia, these pictures were like windows to a world she'd never step into except to polish its glass. She made her way to the executive conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and inside she could hear muffled voices. Her heart sank. Someone was already in there. She knocked softly and peeked in. Mr. Hayes, standing by the head of the long glass table, phone tucked between his ear and shoulder as he rifled through a thick stack of papers. She froze. He glanced up, his sharp eyes landing on her like searchlights. "Cleaning lady, right?" he said briskly, covering the phone's mic with his palm. "Quick, make it fast. I have an investor coming in 15. Mia nodded, quickly rolled her cart inside and began wiping down the spotless table again. She knew it didn't need it, but busy hands kept her mind calm. Mr. Hayes turned his back to her, pacing as he spoke in rapid, clipped tones. Mia dropped to her knees near the window to reach a stubborn scuff mark on the baseboard. Her cloth moved back and forth, her breathing steady. That's when it happened. A sudden sound. Mr. Hayes spun around too quickly, not seeing her crouched low. In one motion he stepped backward. Mia, startled, tried to get up, but her elbow hit the metal leg of a chair. The chair tipped, her hand shot out to catch it, but instead of grabbing the chair, her fingers caught the hem of his tailored suit pants. Time slowed. A terrible tearing sound sliced through the silence. Mr. Hayes froze mid-sentence. His phone slipped from his shoulder and hit the table with a soft thud. The entire back seam of his crisp gray trousers split open, a jagged line of fabric gaping at the worst possible place. Mia's heart dropped to her stomach. She scrambled to her feet, stammering, "Sir, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. It was the chair." He turned slowly, one hand clutching the torn fabric behind him. His eyes were wide with disbelief, his mouth opening and closing before any words came out. You tore my pants," he said, his voice low, deadly calm. Mia's face burned. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes. Please, I'll fix it. I'll pay for it, I swear." He looked at her like she was an insect on his shoe. "Fix it? How exactly do you plan to fix a suit that costs more than your entire month's paycheck?" The words hit her like a slap. She swallowed hard, her mind racing for something, anything to say that wouldn't make this worse. He stepped forward, the ruined seam flapping awkwardly. "Out. Get out before you break anything else." "Please, Mr. Hayes. I can explain. It was my fault, just—" "I know it was your fault," he snapped, adjusting his suit jacket around his waist to hide the tear. He bent to pick up his phone, his movements stiff with humiliation. "Just go. Now." Mia backed away, hands trembling. She fumbled with her cleaning cart, nearly knocking over her bucket of soapy water. She wheeled it out of the room, the wheels squeaking like tiny screams in the silent corridor. Outside the conference room, she pressed her back against the cold wall, breathing hard. She could still hear his voice echoing inside. All her fears rose at once. He would fire her. Maybe today. And then what rent unpaid Liam's shoes? Her mother's medicine. She felt the edges of her vision go blurry. In that moment, Mia wanted to run and never come back, but she knew she couldn't. Not when people were counting on her. Not when she was all they had. She wiped her eyes with the back of her glove, took a deep breath, and pushed her cart down the hallway. She would find him later, she told herself. She would apologize again. She would make it right somehow. She had to. After the accident, Mia finished her shift in a fog. Every step felt heavier than the last, her thoughts circling like restless birds. She kept replaying the sound of the tear, the look in Mr. Hayes's eyes, the heat that had flooded her cheeks when she saw the other executives staring through the glass wall as she wheeled her cart out of the room. She stayed late, hoping to catch Mr. Hayes before he left to explain to plead, but when she peeked into the conference room again, it was empty. Papers scattered across the table, a forgotten coffee mug, a lingering echo of his angry voice that was all that remained. She checked the CEO's office, too vacant. When she got home that night, Liam was waiting at the tiny kitchen table coloring dinosaurs on scrap paper. He looked up with that same gap-toothed grin that always made her heart swell. "Mommy, I drew you a T-Rex." She forced a smile. "Wow, that's the scariest one yet." He squinted at her. "Mommy, why are your eyes red?" Mia opened the fridge, buying time. There wasn't much inside, half a carton of eggs, a few slices of bread. She pulled out the milk, poured him a glass. "Just tired, baby. Lots of cleaning today." When he went to bed, she sat in the dark, staring at her phone. Should she call the company manager? Should she go back in the morning and wait at the door? Her paycheck barely covered rent and groceries. If she lost this job, she didn't even let the thought finish forming. The next morning, Mia woke up before the sun and put on her uniform again. She took the bus downtown, her reflection a blur in the window. Her hands twisted the frayed strap of her old bag. At the building entrance, she flashed her badge at security. The guard, who usually just nodded, paused. His eyes flicked to his screen, then back to her. "I'm sorry, Ms. Rivera," he said, sounding uncomfortable. "I can't let you through today." Her heart stuttered. "What, why?" He leaned closer, his voice low. "I got a memo from upstairs. Says you're not cleared to be here anymore." Mia felt the blood drain from her face. "Please, I need to speak to Mr. Hayes. Just 5 minutes. I have to apologize." The guard looked pained. "I'm sorry. I'll get in trouble if I let you in." She stood there for a moment, her mind racing. People in suits streamed past her, some throwing her quick, curious glances before hurrying on. She stepped aside, pressed her palm against the cold marble wall, and fought to keep her breathing steady. She turned away before the tears could spill, walking quickly out onto the sidewalk. The morning rush surrounded her, honking horns, the smell of fresh coffee from the corner stand, people laughing into their phones. All of it seemed so far from her own world, where a single mistake could cost you everything. With nowhere else to go, she rode the bus back home. She sat near the back, pressing her forehead to the window. Her reflection looked small and tired. She clutched her phone, staring at it, willing it to ring. It didn't. At home, she changed out of her uniform, folded it neatly, and placed it on the end of her bed. She sat beside it, head in her hands. A single mistake, an accident. And yet it felt like proof of everything she feared about herself, that she didn't belong in those gleaming hallways, that her place was always on her knees, cleaning up after lives she'd never touch. When Liam came home from school, he found her staring at the pile of unpaid bills on the table. He climbed onto her lap and pressed his small hands to her cheeks. "It's okay, Mommy. You're the best." His innocence cut deeper than any cruel word Mr. Hayes had thrown at her. She hugged him close, burying her face in his hair. That night, after putting him to bed, she sat at the kitchen table with her phone and searched for cleaning jobs online. Most paid less than what she'd been making. Some needed references. Others were halfway across town. None seemed real enough to help right now. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, she dreamed of endless white hallways, of suits and polished shoes, of chasing after Mr. Hayes's retreating figure, her voice lost in the echo of his footsteps. She dreamed of Liam at the kitchen table asking for a new backpack she couldn't afford. She dreamed of her mother's gentle voice reminding her to breathe, to fight, to stand up, no matter how many times life pushed her down. When the sun rose, she knew what she had to do. She would show up at that building one last time, uniform or not. She would find Mr. Hayes, face him, and tell him what he needed to hear. Because sometimes an apology isn't just about saving your job. Sometimes it's about saving the last piece of your pride. Mia stood in front of the corporate tower once more, this time without her uniform. her badge, or any permission to be there. She wore her cleanest shirt, brushed Liam's tiny comb through her hair until her arms ached, and clasped her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. She could feel the eyes of the security guard following her as she lingered just outside the revolving doors. She knew he wouldn't let her in. But she also knew that waiting at the bottom of these steps was better than doing nothing. Inside, up on the 21st floor, Ethan Hayes moved from meeting to meeting like a ghost. His tailored suit was immaculate. His watch glinted in the conference room lights, and his voice stayed calm and measured as he outlined strategies and fielded questions. But underneath, a small knot of regret kept tugging at him. The boardroom replayed in his mind the tear, the shock on her face, the room's frozen silence. He'd barked at her like she was invisible, like she didn't matter. He told himself it was justified. She had embarrassed him in front of his biggest clients. But no matter how many times he adjusted the knot in his tie, the image wouldn't leave him. His assistant Nora handed him a folder as they walked down the hallway together. "Sir, I rescheduled your lunch meeting." Also about the cleaning lady, Ethan cut her off with a sharp look. "It's handled." Nora paused. "Actually, sir, she's downstairs. She's been waiting by the door for almost an hour." Ethan stopped walking. "She's what?" "She's standing by the front steps. Security called me. She says she just wants a minute to speak with you." He stared past Nora's shoulder at the wall of glass windows. His reflection looked back at him, polished in control. He hated how easily he wore that mask. He hated more that he knew it wasn't the truth. "Do you want me to tell her to leave?" Nora asked. He thought about it. The right answer was yes. That would keep things neat, efficient, unbothered. But the memory of her face, the fear, the apology already in her eyes wouldn't let him say the word. "No," he said at last. "Tell them I'll come down." Outside, Mia checked her phone for the 10th time in 5 minutes, as if she'd missed a message that would never come. A cold breeze made her shiver. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered a quiet prayer to her mother, to luck to anything listening. When the doors parted and Ethan Hayes stepped outside, her breath caught in her throat. He was still every inch the CEO, crisp suit, sharp eyes, that air of belonging she had never known how to carry. For a second he just stood there looking at her. Then he walked down the steps. Each step seemed heavier than she'd expected. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice small but steady. "Please, I just wanted to say..." But he held up a hand, silencing her. He looked over her shoulder, saw people passing, glancing their way. He gestured toward the corner of the plaza where a few benches sat beneath a cluster of slender trees. "Come on," he said. "Let's talk somewhere else." She followed, her heart thumping so hard it made her hands tremble. They sat at opposite ends of the bench. He didn't look at her at first, just stared out at the cars crawling by on the street. "I'm sorry," Mia blurted out. "I never meant for any of that to happen. I know it was stupid. I just wanted to get the stain out, and then..." "Mia," he said, cutting her off. The way her name sounded in his mouth startled them both. He turned to face her. For the first time he really looked at her. Not the uniform, not the badge, not the mistake. Just her. Tired eyes, nervous fingers twisting in her lap. "I know you didn't do it on purpose," he said, his voice low. "I overreacted. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. Or fired you on the spot." Mia blinked, stunned. The apology knocked the words right out of her mouth. You're not mad." Ethan shook his head. "I was embarrassed. That's not your fault. You were doing your job." Mia felt her eyes sting. She swallowed hard, forcing herself not to break down right there. "Mr. Hayes, please, I need this job. I have a son, Liam. He's 6. I don't have anything else right now. I know I messed up, but..." His expression shifted at the word son. Something softened, though he tried to hide it behind a hand brushing at his tie. "You don't have to explain," he said. He took a breath like he was trying to remember how to say the right words. "Look, come back tomorrow. You still have your job." Mia's mouth fell open. "Are you serious?" He nodded once. "We all make mistakes. Some cost more than others. This one, it doesn't have to cost you everything. She didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek with the back of her sleeve. Ethan stood, and so did she. They stood there awkwardly for a heartbeat. Then he did something neither of them expected. He reached out and touched her shoulder, just a light, human touch. "I'll talk to the head of staff. You'll be back on the roster." And he hesitated. "Trying not to ruin any more suits, all right?" Despite everything, a small laugh bubbled out of her. She covered her mouth, embarrassed by it, but when she peeked at him, he was smiling too. Not the corporate grin he wore like armor. A real one, uncertain but warm. "Thank you," she said. Her voice cracked. "You don't know what this means to me." He held her eyes for a moment longer. Then he stepped back, nodding once more before he turned and walked away, his polished shoes echoing on the stone. Mia stood there long after he disappeared inside. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart steady itself. For the first time in weeks, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she could hold her head high again. When Mia walked back into the building the next morning, something felt different. She still wore her cleaning uniform, still carried her bucket and her cloths, but inside she held herself straighter. Her shoulders were back, her eyes forward. Some of the other staff whispered when she passed. Word had spread fast. The girl who tore the CEO's pants and somehow didn't get thrown out forever. Some joked. Others were curious. But Mia kept moving, head held high, because today she had her job back. Her supervisor, Mrs. Green, called her over before she could even punch in. "Well, well. Back from the dead, are we?" the older woman said, not unkindly. She pushed her glasses up her nose and gave Mia a look that was half disbelief, half hidden pride. "Don't stand there like a statue. I need the lobby floors shining. And stay clear of any designer trousers, please." "Yes, ma'am," Mia answered, biting back a smile. She grabbed her cart and started working. Meanwhile, up on the 21st floor, Ethan sat in his corner office, fingers drumming on his desk. He told himself that letting her come back was enough, that his part was done. He didn't owe her more than that. But every time he glanced at the security camera feed on the small monitor by the door, he found himself checking the lobby, wondering if she was okay. His assistant Nora knocked on the open door. "Mr. Hayes, your lunch is here. Should I set it up in the conference room?" "No," Ethan said, then caught himself. "Actually, can you do me a favor? Find out where Mia's working right now. The cleaning lady." Nora raised an eyebrow. "Should I tell her something? Just tell me where she is," Ethan said, standing up. He didn't wait for her answer. Downstairs, Mia was scrubbing scuff marks off the marble entrance when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and nearly knocked over her bucket when she saw him, Ethan Hayes, in another expensive suit, but looking oddly out of place in the lobby at midday. "Mr. Hayes," she stammered, straightening so fast her back twinged. He gave her that small, awkward half-smile again. "Hi, do you have a minute?" Mia looked around at the people coming and going, the echoing lobby where her bucket and mop felt like spotlights on her. Yes, sir." He gestured toward the side entrance where a quiet hallway led to a small staff lounge she knew well. They stepped in. It smelled faintly of coffee and lemon disinfectant. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence between them. "I know you're working," Ethan said, clearing his throat. "I just wanted to check if you're settling in okay." She blinked. "You didn't have to do that." He shrugged one shoulder. "Maybe I did." He paused, glancing around the tiny room. He seemed uncomfortable, like he didn't know how to stand without commanding a boardroom. "Listen, I owe you more than just giving your job back. I embarrassed you. I made it worse than it had to be." Mia shook her head. "You didn't have to come down here. I'm just glad I can keep working. That's all I wanted." "But it's not all you should have," Ethan said quietly. He rested a hand on the back of one of the cheap plastic chairs, tapping his fingers. "Tell me something. Why this job? Why not something else?" Mia looked at him, trying to read his face. Was this a test? A trap? But there was no sharpness in his eyes, just curiosity and something softer she couldn't name. Because it's steady, she answered honestly. Because my son needs a roof, and I can't gamble on dreams. I tried to get better jobs, but they always want college or experience I don't have. This is safe. Her voice caught. She hated how naked that truth sounded in this small room. But Ethan didn't flinch away. You said you have a son. Liam, he asked. She nodded. He's 6. He wants to be an astronaut, or a doctor, or a magician depending on the day. She laughed under her breath. I just want him to be able to choose something better than I did. Ethan's eyes flicked away, landing on the flickering vending machine. He seemed to weigh something heavy, then let out a breath. When I was his age, my father used to tell me the world was for men like us, men who could afford mistakes because they owned the boardroom. I believed him, for a long time. He looked back at her. But he was wrong. The world doesn't care about your suit if you can't be decent. I forgot that. You reminded me. Mia felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. So here's what I want to do, Ethan said. There's an opening in our facilities management office front desk support. It pays better, regular hours, no scrubbing floors at midnight. You'd get training. Benefits. She stared at him, stunned. You'd do that? For me? For you? He said simply. For Liam. And maybe for me too. He cracked a small smile. You already turned my day upside down once. Might as well make it count for something good. Mia's eyes watered before she could stop it. She wiped at her cheek with her sleeve, embarrassed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and handed her a business card. His personal line embossed in silver. Call Nora when you're ready. Or come find me. I mean it. She clutched the card like it was made of gold. Her throat felt too tight to answer. She just nodded, blinking back tears. He stepped back, hands in his pockets. I'll let you get back to work. Don't let Mrs. Green catch you slacking, okay? She managed a tiny laugh. No, sir, I won't. As he turned to go, he paused in the doorway. He looked back, his eyes meeting hers one last time, soft, almost searching. You did good, Mia. Don't forget that. Then he was gone, leaving the small room smelling like cheap coffee and fresh possibility. Mia leaned back against the table, pressed the card to her chest, and for the first time in a long time, let herself believe that maybe doors could open even for people like her. The next few days passed like a dream for Mia. She floated through her shifts, cleaning the same smudged glass doors and mopping the same marble floors. But now, every scrape of her mop felt different. Every time she reached into her pocket and felt Ethan's card, she remembered that maybe, just maybe, her life didn't have to stay on this loop forever. She hadn't told Liam yet. How could she? She wasn't sure it was real herself. She replayed Ethan's words 100 times while standing at the sink washing rags or waiting for the bus in the cold dawn air. She wanted to believe him, this man in the perfect suit who could change people's futures with a few words, but part of her still braced for the rug to be pulled out again. Then on Friday evening, just as she was finishing her shift, Mia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She checked it, frowning when she saw the daycare's number. Hello, Mrs. Peters, she said, already feeling her chest tighten. Mia, honey, don't panic, said Mrs. Peters, the older woman, who ran the small after-school room where Liam stayed until she could pick him up. But Liam's not feeling too well. He's got a bit of a fever. I think you should come get him soon. Mia's heart dropped into her stomach. She glanced around the empty lobby, the echo of her mop bucket wheels suddenly too loud. I'm on my way, she said, already stripping off her gloves and pulling her bag over her shoulder. She made it to the bus stop just in time, breathless eyes darting between the darkening sky and the bus timetable. The whole ride to the daycare, she squeezed her hands together, picturing Liam's small face flushed with fever. By the time she stepped through the door, She was fighting tears. Inside, Liam sat on a little beanbag wrapped in a blanket, his cheeks pink and his eyelids heavy. He looked up and managed a tired smile when he saw her. "Hi, Mama." "Hey, baby," she murmured, kneeling down to touch his forehead. "Too warm. Too warm by far." "Did you have a good day?" he asked, his voice scratchy as if this was any normal afternoon. Of course she lied, pressing a kiss to his damp hair. "We're going to get you home and warm, okay?" Mrs. Peters handed her a note. He was okay until about an hour ago. But the fever's creeping up. If it doesn't break tonight. She didn't finish, but Mia understood. A doctor's visit, tests, bills, more money she didn't have. She thanked her quietly, bundled Liam up, and carried him out into the cold. On the bus home, he dozed against her shoulder, small hand gripping her jacket. She stared out the window at the blur of city lights, her heart thudding with old fears. Back at their tiny apartment, she made him a lukewarm bath to cool him down, spooned medicine between his lips, and sat by his bedside with a wet cloth on his forehead. His breathing steadied, but his eyes fluttered open now and then, finding her in the dim light. "Mama, did you have coffee today?" he whispered, once half delirious. It made her laugh despite the tight knot in her chest. Coffee, he always asked about her coffee, as if it were proof she'd taken care of herself too. "A little," she whispered back. "Now close your eyes, baby. Dream about rockets and stars, okay?" But after he drifted off again, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the faded wall. She pulled Ethan's card from her pocket, ran her thumb over the embossed letters. She thought about the desk job, the promise of regular hours, health insurance, a real paycheck. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, bleary-eyed, she called Nora's number before dawn. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped her phone. "Ms. Hayes' office." Nora's calm voice answered. It's Mia, the cleaning staff. Could I please speak to Mr. Hayes?" A pause. "One moment." Mia waited, pressing the phone to her ear so hard it hurt. She heard a click, then his voice. "Mia, are you okay?" She nearly broke down right there at the sound of how real his concern sounded. "I'm sorry to bother you. I know it's Saturday, but my son, he's sick. And I want to take that position you offered, if it's still there." She heard him exhale a soft, steady sound that somehow made her want to cry harder. "It's still here. It's yours. Come in Monday morning. I'll make sure Nora gets you set up. Don't worry about paperwork or anything else. Just take care of Liam today, all right?" A tear slipped down her cheek. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I mean it. Thank you. Call me Ethan," he said quietly. "And Mia, he'll be okay. You're not alone in this anymore." When she hung up, she sat back on her couch, the phone in her lap, the soft sound of Liam's breathing from the bedroom. She closed her eyes and let herself believe that maybe this time for once, things were going to be okay. But life wasn't done testing her yet. Monday morning, she dressed Liam in his warmest clothes and dropped him off at Mrs. Peters' place, promising she'd be back early if he needed her. Then she headed for the office, clutching her battered old purse and that precious card in her pocket like a lifeline. When she stepped through the doors, the lobby felt different. She wasn't pushing a cart today. She wore a plain blouse and slacks she'd found in a second-hand store, pressed as neatly as she could manage. She walked to the front desk, introduced herself to Nora, and signed a dozen forms with hands that barely stopped trembling. Ethan came by just before lunch. He didn't say much, just gave her a nod, and the smallest of smiles that said more than any speech could. "You'll do fine," he murmured. "I know it." But at 2 p.m., just as she was settling in, her phone buzzed again. She stepped into the hall to answer, heart in her throat. Mrs. Peters' voice was tight. "Mia, honey, I think you need to come now. He's worse. A lot worse." Mia felt the hallway tilt. She muttered a thank you, turned, and found Ethan standing right there as if he'd known. One look at her face, and he didn't ask a single question. "Go," he said firmly. "We'll sort this out later. Family first." She nodded, her vision blurry. and as she raced down the hallway, new job, new hope all hanging by a thread, she prayed that this time life wouldn't slam the door shut again. The cab ride to the clinic felt longer than any train across the country. Mia sat in the back seat, staring out the window, her mind spiraling with every bump in the road. She clutched her purse in her lap, her phone gripped so tightly her knuckles ached. She kept checking it, waiting for any message from Mrs. Peters. When she arrived, she nearly ran through the sliding doors. Inside, she found Mrs. Peters pacing by the reception desk. The older woman spotted her and rushed over, placing a calming hand on her arm. "He's in there with the doctor now, Mia. They're running some tests. He's a strong boy, sweetheart." But Mia could barely hear her. All she could see was Liam, his tiny face pale and too quiet, curled on a cot in an exam room surrounded by sterile white walls and machines she didn't understand. When the doctor finally stepped out, clipboard in hand, Mia's heart stopped. She braced for the worst words like infection, hospital stay bills, but the doctor's face was calm, even kind. "Miss Lopez, Liam's going to be all right. He's got a bad virus, but you brought him in early. We'll give him fluids, keep his fever down. He should perk up in a few days with rest and care." Mia closed her eyes, her legs nearly giving out from relief. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, whispering a soft thank you, though she wasn't even sure who she was thanking: God, fate, the doctor, or maybe all three. They let her sit by Liam's bedside while he rested with an IV drip. She stroked his small hand, whispered silly stories, and hummed lullabies from when he was a baby. Every time he opened his eyes, she forced herself to smile so he wouldn't see the tears she was swallowing back. A few hours later, once he was stable enough to leave, she wrapped him in his coat and held him close as they stepped into the crisp evening air. He was sleepy, but his small voice was clear enough when he tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, did you work at your new job today?" She paused in the doorway of the clinic, looking down at him, her eyes stinging. "Not today, baby. Today I worked on being your mama." He nodded, satisfied with that answer, and nestled into her side as they waited for the bus home. When they got back to their apartment, Mia laid Liam gently in bed, checked his temperature one more time, and sat beside him until he drifted off. Only then did she stand in the tiny kitchen, her back pressed to the wall, the hum of the old refrigerator, the only sound in the room. She pulled Ethan's card out again and stared at it, her thoughts tangled with guilt and hope. Would she lose this chance? Would they think she wasn't reliable because she'd run out on her first day? Before she could talk herself out of it, she dialed the number. It rang only once. Mia, Ethan's voice. Warm, steady, like a light switched on in the dark. I'm sorry, I left today. I should have called. You don't need to apologize," he said gently. "How's Liam?" She closed her eyes, leaning against the wall. "He's okay. Better. They said he'll be fine." "Good. That's all that matters right now. But the job?" "It's waiting for you," he cut in firmly. "You're not losing anything, Mia. Come in tomorrow when you can. Bring Liam if you have to. We'll figure it out." She pressed a hand over her mouth to muffle the sob that escaped her. How could someone so far above her in the world talk to her like she mattered? Like her problems weren't a burden but something he was willing to share. "Thank you," she whispered, voice cracking. "I promise I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he said simply. "Now rest. Take care of him. See you soon." When she hung up, she let herself cry, a quiet, grateful cry that soaked the sleeve of her second-hand sweater. And when she woke the next morning to Liam's sleepy smile and a cooler forehead, she knew for the first time in a long time that maybe tomorrow wouldn't look so much like yesterday. 3 weeks later, Mia sat at her small new desk by the wide office window. Outside, the city buzzed the same as always, but inside, everything felt new. She wore a simple blouse and a tidy ponytail, and on her desk sat a framed photo of Liam holding his toy rocket. She'd started slow, basic tasks, filing phone calls. But every day she learned more, watched more, asked questions. Ethan noticed. Nora noticed. Even the other assistants who'd once walked right past her, as if she were invisible, now offered warm smiles and coffee on tough days. Liam was doing better too. His cough was gone, his energy back. Some evenings when she came to pick him up, she'd find him with his face pressed to the daycare window waiting to see her first so he could run straight into her arms. One afternoon as she was leaving for the day, she found Ethan waiting by the front door. He wasn't in his usual crisp suit, but a softer sweater, his expression different too, lighter somehow, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all day. "Hey," he said, holding out a paper bag. "You skipped lunch again." She laughed softly, taking it with shy fingers. "How do you always know it's my job?" he teased, but his tone softened when he added, "And because you matter here, Mia, you and Liam both. You're not alone anymore, okay?" She swallowed hard, her throat thick. He wasn't just her boss. Somewhere in between the long days and the soft exchanges, he'd become something more. A reminder that life could be gentle when you least expected it. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." He smiled, and for a moment, they just stood there in the quiet lobby. No cleaning cart, no ripped pants, no stain she had to scrub away. Just two people standing side by side at the start of something new, and as she stepped out into the evening, the city lights bright around her, and the warmth of the bag in her hands, Mia knew that maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't about what she'd lost or cleaned away. It was about what she'd found when she dared to believe she deserved more. And this time no one could take it away.